Good morning, and welcome to SIA and IBM's webinar called Managing Change Using Analytics to Optimize Supply Chain Management Performance. Before we begin, I would like to note that all participant lines have been muted. For all questions or comments, please use the chat feature located on the right side of your screen. I'm very happy to be joined today by Paul Hoy from IBM and Andy Frankel from SIA. Paul is responsible for leading IBM's business analytics solution growth in the manufacturing and distribution industries. He's also responsible for driving market strategy, developing and aligning solutions with target markets, and helping business users derive value from IBM's business analytics applications. We also have Andy Frankel from SIA, who is a senior executive and shareholder. And SIA is a IBM Premier Business Partner and IT solutions provider based in Montreal. Andy has over 28 years of experience as an IT consultant, strategist, and project manager, including 10 years at a global IT consulting firm, 2 years in the private sector, and the last 16 years at SIA. He is responsible for helping SI customers drive business value and rapid time to benefit from their IT investments. In our agenda today, we'll of course talk about business analytics, what it is, and why it is important for the manufacturing industry specifically. Then we will also show you how leading manufacturers today use business analytics to differentiate themselves and make better management decisions. Following that, Andy will talk about SIA, our experience with analytics, especially in the manufacturing industry, and how we are positioned to be your go-to partner for IBM Analytics. Next, we will show you different ways to how you can start with business analytics and get started quickly in your organization. Finally, we'll have some time at the end to answer any questions that you may have. So let's get started. Paul, welcome.
Thank you, Henry, and it's a great pleasure to be here today speaking with your clients about some of the values that analytics can bring into their manufacturing environment. One of the things that we consistently see is it's both an exciting and also a scary turmoil time in the manufacturing space. We have unprecedented opportunities in terms of the economic recovery is well underway in many areas. Customers are starting to come back and look to build up their inventories, but yet it's still a very cautious time in the manufacturing space. The manufacturers really have to wrestle with a number of changes and a number of factors that they never had to deal with in past years. Specifically, we see a lot of change and a lot of demand around the customer demand. So customer demand is more volatile than it's ever been, both in terms of shorter lead times, customers wishing to change orders on short factor times, and placing more demand on the manufacturers. The economic instability is still present in the fact that we're not seeing large manufacturing orders from both B2B and B2C customers. So our manufacturing client base is really looking at how to project and create demand plans in a time frame when change is still occurring and the market has not settled down. Product life cycles are much shorter than they've ever been. So the manufacturers are really working to create new products, bring them to market, and then manage a very short saleable window when they can work to identify their market opportunity. And then last but certainly not least is the whole issue of dealing with supply chain disruptions. As we look at the supply chain space, both manufacturers that do their own manufacturing and those that have outsourced really have to deal with issues around supply chain disruption, areas that they can't control, both from a supply base and also from, as we've recently seen, natural disruptions to the supply chain. So there's really a lot of factors, both in terms of functions within their control, cost driving, needing to optimize operations, and also outside of their control, customer demand, as well as supply chain issues and disruptions that manufacturers have to balance. What we've increasingly seen is manufacturers are turning toward analytics as a way to help buffer some of this uncertainty and how to drive both greater customer value and also reduce and control internal costs. In recent surveys of organizations that outperformed their peer group, we see that organizations that lead in analytics are 3 times more likely to outperform those in their peer group that are just starting an analytic journey. Similarly, when we rate customers among their peers, those that use analytics to make decisions, to bring insight into their business, and to do some of the trade-offs that they have to in their operations, they're over 5 times more likely to use analytics. So top performers are more than 5 times more likely to use analytics than their competitors. If we look at what this means from a practical perspective, analytics tends to be adopted across the entire organization. And that's not to say that companies will implement analytics in every department at the same time in one fell swoop, but it's really saying that analytics plays a role across the whole organization in driving value. So we frequently see the sales management answering questions such as, what if they could more accurately manage demand plans and create more accurate forecasts? What if my marketing folks could target offers and target promotions to specific customers rather than just looking at blanket programs that may not be as effective or may waste money because I'm providing offers to customers that don't need it? What if finance could reduce operating costs and better project financial performance through simulation and greater transparency into the operations? And on a supply chain perspective, frequently people are asking, what if I could balance supply and demand? What if I could help shape that supply plan based upon the customer demand and then improve my visibility into the operations? So frequently the use of analytics starts with trying to answer a series of business questions. So we don't see customers adopting analytics from a technology perspective just to have the latest and greatest technology, but they're really trying to do it to address key operating questions in their respective departments. So I've used the word analytics a number of times, and frequently we'll see people with multiple definitions of analytics. We'll see people that may refer to analytics based upon reporting, which is where analytics started. But really, when we look at it from a manufacturing user perspective, analytics isn't about technology. It's about providing tools and providing resources for users to answer several key business questions. So frequently, we'll start with a question such as, how am I doing? Customers have metrics in mind or have measures on whether they're doing well. So it's looking at answering questions on how am I doing regarding labor, costs, delivery to customers. And this is frequently, when I look at analytics, this is frequently addressed through tools such as dashboards and scorecards and application areas that let people start to drive day-to-day visibility into their performance. The next question that people then ask is, why am I performing in a certain way? So once I understand my status and my performance, I need to get to the causality. Why am I performing well? If I have issues with performance, what are the root causes? And this is the area of reporting, and this is the area of drill down into multidimensional analysis. So this is cases where I want to start to see why demand is happening a certain way, or if I have demand issues relative to forecast, let me understand where my issues are. So if I look at the 2 questions, how am I doing and why, then the next question that analytics looks to address is, what should I be doing, what's likely to happen? And in this case, I'm now looking at several tools around collaborative planning and predictive analytics or advanced analytics. And this is a case where I'm saying I know I have a better handle through analytics on why performance is happening in a certain way. Let me model what my alternatives are and do trade-offs among scenarios. So this is the planning area, both in terms of financial planning, where I do planning and budgeting, but it's also operational planning. So where I start to look at areas such as what will happen if I can shape demand into a certain way, or if various forecast scenarios are realized. How can I reconcile production to the financial plan? So what should my operation plan be to do that reconciliation? What can I do to predict customer demand or predict what's happening in the market or predict what's happening in production? So one of the fastest growing areas we see around business analytics is in that predictive area. So when I put it all together, business analytics is typically a suite of application areas that will help address business questions. So we have the traditional dashboard and scorecarding to give me visibility into how I'm performing. We have the analysis and reporting that helps me understand causality and helps me, get to root cause of issues. And then we have a series of planning tools that will help manufacturers review multiple scenarios and determine what the best course of action is to balance customer demand, supply, and cost from the financial plan. Let's get a little bit more specific and look at what this might look like as I start to apply analytics into the overall manufacturing environment. So what we see is that people that are assessing analytics and looking for best practices around analytics to help with an overall decision-making process, people are tending to look at a framework that has analytics operating at several levels. So, for example, we see many people today trying to implement supply chain metrics to see what's happening across their entire organization. So frequently we see initiatives associated with bringing metrics across the whole organization, looking at end-to-end supply chain performance, everything from supply chain planning to my suppliers to my internal production through distribution to the customers. So the view into the world, if you will, is through a series of scorecards and dashboards that let me bring together a top-level overall view of my organization with the ability to drive into specific areas to understand the detail and causality. So the metrics then get fed by a integrated sales and operations planning process, which is the second major area that we see manufacturers looking to utilize analytics today. Companies frequently have financial planning, demand planning in terms of its forecast generation, and some level of supply planning where there's a weekly or monthly production plan. But what they frequently lack is a way to bring all of those pieces together. And that's the realm of sales and operations planning. We see organizations implementing S&OP to provide that executive level view across the organization. And when I say executive, I don't just mean it's a CEO or CFO tool. It's operational heads in various departments will use S&OP to balance a demand, a supply, and a financial plan. They'll drive to consensus, and now that operating plan helps set the targets for what the supply chain metrics should be. So we see organizations using analytics to do that integrated planning. They'll come to collaboration on an S&OP plan, and then they'll use that to set the targets and to provide the benchmarks for the day-to-day operations. At the operational level, we see people then implementing specific functional or departmental application areas. So analytics in production to make sure that they're on track. Analytics in procurement to look at tools such as supplier scorecards, so I make sure that my suppliers are supporting the overall operating plan. So the day-to-day activities support the strategic plan through metrics and dashboards that roll up and feed the overall company view of the operations. If I look at the right side of this slide, a key part to use of analytics in manufacturing is to providing that bridge across all of the transactional systems that are implemented. In some ways, we're almost victims of our own success in the sense that we've implemented transaction systems for ERP. We have supply chain planning and execution systems. We may have CRM systems implemented to get views of the customer. But what organizations are looking at is really a way to bridge across all of those systems to provide an overall view of the performance. So the key to analytics is that it provides that whole organization view where I can bring that information together into one environment for analysis. And then moving to the left side of the slide, the other key to analytics is that we're not limited to one output type. And what I mean by that is some users just want to see exceptions pushed to a mobile device, such as an iPhone or a BlackBerry. Other users just want to see exception reports. Just push out a PDF of a report. Then we have users that need to understand the details and do the slicing and dicing of the data to get into the causality. So a well-implemented analytics environment provides that one source of information, regardless of whether I'm doing planning, whether I'm doing analysis, and gives me the ability to match the view of that analytics to the specific user's wishes. So that provides the framework of how people wish to look at analytics. And again, people don't wake up and say, I have to implement an overall supply chain performance framework. What they say is, where will I get the greatest short-term ROI? Will it be through an analysis of my supply chain? Will it be through visibility? Or will it be through collaborative planning? And then we'll work with them to go through and provide step-by-step implementations that drive that short-term ROI. Where we see people focusing on that short-term ROI frequently is around supply chain execution areas. In a recent study by IBM's Global Business Value organization, which goes out and surveys various chief officers in companies, we recently did a Chief Supply Chain Officer survey that looked at the key stay-awake issues, if you will, from the supply chain perspective. And I don't imagine many people will be surprised at the results, in the sense that people are increasingly worried about controlling costs in their environment, worried about visibility across the entire supply chain. There's tons of information, tons of access to data, but very little framework for doing overall visibility into supply chain performance. Increasing worry about supply chain risk and volatility, and then several ways of identifying concerns about customers. There's concern about managing customer demand. Over 50% of the respondents indicated a key issue is understanding and managing with customer demand. Looking at globalization, so understanding supply chain performance in a global context. So there's a lot of concern and a lot of pressure on supply chain executives to really touch on everything that affects the company: revenue, customer delivery, and cost performance. But one of the challenges that we see is the tools that we provide these supply chain executives don't always match what they need to do. In a recent Gartner analysis, they determined that many of the tools that organizations have don't really address the supply chain visibility needs. So we have companies that have implemented ERP systems that provide rich transactional information, run the day-to-day business of the company, but don't lend themselves to providing that supply chain view and provide an analytics view. And yet Gartner identifies what we see in the market. Supply chain really is a major consumer of analytics. When you think about the opportunities to improve supply chain performance, it really is a functional area that lends itself toward addressing an analytics view. So rather than just operating on gut instinct or operating on, we've always done it this way, progressive organizations are really bringing analytics to their supply chain view. When I say bringing analytics to the supply chain, specifically we see organizations trying to drive a metrics view of the environment. And in particular, we see many organizations adopting a score model. The score model is driven by the Supply Chain Council. The Supply Chain Council is a nonprofit organization that focuses on supply chain best practices and focuses on what organizations really should be measuring in order to run a best-of-class supply chain. It's made up of manufacturers, suppliers, vendors, academicians, consultants, all focused on best processes around supply chain. And they've defined over 500 best-in-class metrics that has been named the SCORE model. Now, the SCORE model does several things. It provides a functional view of the organization, so I can look at my planning processes, my sourcing, my making, my delivery, and returns from customers. But the SCORE model also lets me take an attribute view of my performance. So I can look at all of my metrics associated with cost performance, or all of my metrics associated with asset utilization. Or I can take an external view. Show me all of the metrics that are associated with reliability or responsiveness or customer agility. So it really provides an effective way of both looking functionally and across the organization. And what IBM and key partners such as SIA have done is provided a framework for implementing metrics. So we offer a supply chain metrics blueprint that pre-delivers these 550 supply chain metrics. So an organization that is looking to get better visibility on their supply chain merely has to work on selecting which metrics they wish to use and mapping it to their data source as opposed to the non-value add activities of defining which metrics should we be tracking. So it becomes a very effective way of moving from, I want to get better visibility into my supply chain, to having a solution that lets me focus on supply chain metrics. So as I said earlier, supply chain metrics are one of the key drivers that we see moving manufacturers toward analytics. The second area that we see people focusing on is the discipline of sales and operations planning. S&OP is an area that's becoming frequently more involved and more pervasive in manufacturing organizations. So sales and operations planning is a tool that integrates processes across the entire organization. So it's designed to take demand planning, use that demand plan to drive a supply plan, look at obstacles that might arise in meeting that supply plan, and then looking at what is the financial results of meeting this plan in a certain way. So when organizations implement S&OP, Aberdeen, which is another consulting organization that focuses on the manufacturing space, they've really identified some of the value that organizations get from S&OP. And they're focused in the areas that map back to what some of the concerns are. So almost 60% can point to S&OP as improving their top-line revenue performance. Over 50% also point to cost reductions. Almost 50% point to S&OP as a tool of around managing demand volatility from the customers. So think about it. If I implement a closed-loop analytics perspective, I can look at S&OP to balance the supply, demand, and finance plans and come to consensus on what the plan can be. And then I use supply chain analytics to monitor how well I'm doing in meeting that plan. So what that looks like, if I focus on the S&OP, is it lets me do several things. If I focus on the center of this slide, at the top, I'm looking at managing my demand. And S&OP isn't about what am I going to sell next Tuesday. It's about looking at my demand plan over the next 1 to 2 years, sometimes in granular detail. Sometimes I want to look at it by product, by customer, by week. Sometimes I want to look at it at higher level. I want to see by market, by key product family, by quarter. So S&OP lets me look at demand plans for products I might not have even introduced yet. So I'm looking at how do I balance that demand over time? What do multiple forecasts look like? Let me see forecasts that assume new product introduction. Let me look at forecast variations that look at managing the entry into new markets. So it's really looking at multiple forecast types, some of them statistical. Many manufacturers use predictive analytics to come up with a statistically based predictive forecast and then use that as a baseline to apply their knowledge to fine-tune the forecast. But S&OP starts with a demand plan. Then that demand plan is used to drive a supply plan. And what that supply plan says is, okay, here's how I'm going to try to meet what sales and marketing has told me they're going to sell and bring to market over the next 1 to 2 years. I might look at various constraints. They could be specific facility constraints around labor, machinery. They could be material constraints, such as material availability from key suppliers. And I'm looking at a high level of what the obstacles are to meeting the plan and managing the plan by both adjusting capacity, adjusting time frames of meeting the plan, but I'm making an informed decision about the trade-offs of meeting that supply plan. And then the third leg of S&OP is looking at the executive review and driving consensus through the process. So that's where I bring in a financial plan. And in effect, what the financial plan says is that if I'm going to sell or bring to market these products, and I'm going to produce them and procure them in this way, working around obstacles that I've identified, can I make money at it? So I'm looking at how do I go through and build simulated financial statements for balance sheets, P&L, cash flow, where I can go through and I can see the financial effects of S&OP. And now what I can do is simulate the various alternatives. So I may come up with solutions where I say, that's a good plan, but I want to incent the sale of higher margin products, or I want to build more revenue from emerging markets, so let's go back and adjust the sales plan. And what S&OP does is it lets me go through and model or simulate the various alternatives so I can come up with the plan that best balances customer achievement, internal operation goals, be they finance or utilization goals, and the financial targets of the company. It's also important to note that looking to the left, the S&OP process doesn't replace existing transaction systems. I still need the ERP's application to run the day-to-day business, but ERP doesn't provide that view that I need to do the simulation and do the what-if of S&OP. So the S&OP solution from an analytics perspective complements that day-to-day basis. Now, just as we had a blueprint that addressed supply chain metrics and supply chain visibility, we offer a blueprint that addresses sales and operations planning perspective. So the S&OP blueprint provides templates and models that give a manufacturer a baseline toward building their S&OP perspective. So we provide a demand model, a supply model, and financial models that then get tailored to the individual company's requirements. So when I look at the S&OP blueprint, it integrates supply and demand planning. It helps balance the planning with the financial targets so that I'm not just looking at an operational view, I'm looking at the operations and the financial impact. Similarly, I'm not just taking a financial view, I want to increase revenue by X%, and we need to cut costs by so much, and then having the operations decoupled from that. I'm using S&OP to link the financial and the operational planning process. And then when I start to look at how the benefits flow through the organization, that's when we see S&OP delivering tools that let organizations quickly respond to changes in the supply plan. So it could be both changes in customer demand, or it could be changes in what my vendors and suppliers are able to do. I can go through and look at the effective change before I commit to it so that I can start to go through and say, is this a change that I want to make? Or is the change cost prohibitive? So even though it may make good sense operationally, it may not be the best financial decision for the organization. So really well-implemented S&OP process helps organizations go through and balance those three factors, demand, supply, and finance, and make some educated decisions. And we'd be glad to share more information on how to get started with an S&OP process, but frequently people will focus on building a forecast or a demand plan. Once they have confidence in that demand plan, they'll integrate that into supply. And then once they have the demand and the supply, it becomes relatively straightforward to simulate and create the day-to-day financial views of the organization. So we've talked about several different solution areas. What I'd like to do is just take a minute and show you what this might look like from a user's perspective. So not from an IT tools perspective, but if I'm a user implementing business analytics, what might my day look like? What value might this bring to the organization? So what we see is people will frequently focus on dashboards as the primary view into the organization. So they will implement dashboards that look at specific functional areas, but also look at a balanced view across the organization. So in this case, we have a dashboard that focuses on some of my financial performance, where I can go through and see performance against key financial metrics, but I can also look at, in this case, how much of my my revenue is being contributed by new products if I've decided that that's a key driver for the organization. Or I might want to also blend in a view of capacity utilization. So at our top level view, we're going to put in dashboards that provide more of a balanced approach, the balanced scorecard view of the organizational performance, not just focusing on purchasing or suppliers or customers or finance, but really providing that overall balance. When I start to drill down and look at a supply chain view of that information, which rolls up to support that earlier view, we see companies taking several different approaches in terms of how I want to look at my information. So in this case, the SCORE blueprint delivers a view that lets me look functionally. So in the example that you have in front of you, I'm looking at metrics associated with supply chain planning, sourcing or interacting with my suppliers, production, delivery to the customers, and then returns, both returns of product for quality reasons, but also returns of packaging, returns of pallets, returns of shipping material that may be part of my normal business operations. So this view gives a good summarized view of how I'm doing by key functional areas within the organization. And then, of course, I can drill down into any of the metrics that might be red or might be trending in the wrong direction. So I can do a summarized view that lets me look at my performance around functional areas. But I can also go through and do two other things which provide great value. As you see on the left, I can go through and I can look at my performance by those key areas that I spoke of before. So in this case, I'm looking at a series of metrics that deal with my responsiveness to the customer. But I can also look at metrics associated with cost or agility in managing changes to customer demand. So the same metrics give me different views to manage the business. But what we also see customers deriving great value from is in the center view of the screen, what we call an impact diagram. So in this case, we see that I have a cycle time metric that's yellow, so it's in that caution area. And frequently, organizations know when they have a problem. You know, the phone starts ringing, they'll start getting emails from customers, complaining about service levels. So it's not hard to tell when there's a problem. But what companies wrestle with is how do I understand the causality behind problems? And that's what the integrated link of the SCORE metrics allow you to do. So SCORE metrics look at multiple levels. What do I mean by multiple levels? I may track a metric such as customer satisfaction. That might be my top level metric. Well, customer satisfaction is made up of several factors. One of them could be perfect order. One of them could be timeliness of the order. One of them could be my ability to respond to their changes. So those become my level 2 metrics that feed into that customer satisfaction measure. If I look at perfect order, that in turn is made up of other metrics. Did I deliver it on time? Did I deliver the right quantity? Did I deliver the order complete, if that's what my service level states? So I have multiple levels of metrics that support my overall view. So in this case, I see that I have a source cycle time metric that's yellow, and I can see that there's 3 metrics that support that, and my problem is my order fulfillment cycle time metric, which is currently operating in the red. So I can do several things. I can drill down into the source of problems within that metric. In a integrated approach to metrics, I would have people in this organization who are monitoring that metric on their own dashboards, so I would have them taking corrective action before my downstream metrics get any worse. It's very easy to go through and identify what some of the corrective areas that need to be taken to address supply chain issues. The other effective use that we see around use of analytics in the S&OP and supply chain area is in helping synchronize demand and supply and get good views to customer service levels, inventory, and financial investment levels. So this screen is a view from our sales and operations planning blueprint. It provides a view into what is the current demand, period by period, what is the current supply to meet that demand, and then what is my inventory position going to look like, in this case in terms of days of supply. But I can go through and I can look in terms of inventory investment, inventory financial impact. and I can go through and I can make simulations to the process. So I can go through and determine that I may not be carrying enough inventory, so I may need to increase some of my inventory investment, but that's going to come at a financial cost to the organization as I invest in more inventory. And that's where we start to provide subsequent analysis into those financial decisions. So in this case, I'm looking at a deeper level view of my inventory metrics within the S&OP blueprint. So I can look at how I'm performing target to actual in terms of target inventory, inventory turns, looking at gross margin by product, and as we'll see, I can also look at it by customer. So I'm starting to do some of that views rather than just saying I'm not carrying enough inventory, or I don't have enough view into my I don't have enough inventory to meet customer demand, so I better produce more. I can start to go through and look at that whole inventory picture and then make simulations. Well, what if I change my inventory position based on more supply? I can look and see, do I have the capacity? Do I have the manufacturing capability? Do my suppliers have the ability to meet that demand? And then what is the impact on the company financials of doing that? So I can work at a high level to see what is the inventory impact of these decisions. I can also use analytics to get to a very granular, very low level of detail. So many of our customers use analytics to look at my cost structure so they can do a better job of pricing, bidding on jobs, managing cost, literally, if you wish, taking it down to a fully landed cost by product, by customer, looking at customer profitability. So these are views that might not normally be available through the ERP system, but by using analytics for the summarization of information, I can come through and I can get a much better, much more usable perspective of the data. And then last but certainly not least is the ability to simulate changes in impact. And I've mentioned this several times. This screen is showing the impact from the sales and operations planning blueprint and changes of demand and supply. So what we're looking at here is a simulated income statement that's driven by one of my what-if scenarios, and all of the items that you're seeing in purple have been changed as a result of the simulation. So literally by going through and making some of the operational decisions, I can go through and I can see what is the impact on cost of goods, on material investment, on gross margin. So I can go through and I can see the financial impact of making changes to the various alternatives. So it makes a very strong closed-loop implementation that lets me look at modeling different scenarios, looking at the effect of those scenarios, and then once I've come to consensus on the plan, executing the plan through the ERP systems and the various transaction systems, and then using metrics to go through and monitor the process so I can make sure that I'm on track. So as we start to look at what these various areas look like, there's a very strong ROI that's demonstrated by customers that go down the analytics journey. One of the customers that has spoken at a number of our events and has documented ROI is Becker Underwood. Becker is interesting in the sense that they're a global organization that had a lot of base practices in place. They had reporting, they had forecasting systems, they had production systems, but they were missing the forecasts. Their forecast was inaccurate, resulting in too much inventory. And as we've all seen, at the same time they were building inventory, they were also missing customer shipments as they built the wrong inventory. So what they were looking at was systems that really didn't synchronize throughout the supply chain. So they looked at using analytics to complement their ERP systems and to help them do a better job of collaborative planning from a supply perspective. So by using some of the demand planning and S&OP practices that we're talking about, they provided better visibility into their forecasting, which let them monitor their forecast and really put some discipline around forecast improvement. So they point to a 15% improvement in forecast accuracy. Now that improved accuracy let them go through and provide much greater control over their inventory. So they look at a 50% increase in inventory turns. And what's really interesting is at the same time that they were moving their inventory faster, They point to better customer service, better customer delivery, so they were producing more of the right inventory and moving it through at a higher volume. They also point to forecast conversations weren't based on history, weren't based on gut feel, but by looking at a real-time view of the information, they were able to have much more insight into forecasts and talk much more about the actual customers, the actual demand, while they could still shape some of that demand. Now, an interesting aspect to the Becker story is there's a third-party group, Nucleus Research, that does customer analysis and does ROI studies on various implementations. So they will look at a vendor's website, identify a customer that's listed, and then work with that customer to do ROI documentation. So in Becker's case, Nucleus did the study of the results and the costs, and they've documented almost a 400% ROI with a payback in 4 months. And in addition to the areas that we talked about already, they also point to better negotiations and better pricing from the suppliers, because they could give them more accurate input into the demand that the suppliers would be seeing. So that was an unintended side benefit of better forecasting, in that they were better able to understand their raw material needs and drive better pricing that way. They reduced their inventory through better forecasting, and their responsiveness and timeliness becomes much greater as well. Now, Becker is just one example. Other companies have derived great ROI by focusing on the operational side. So electronics manufacturers such as Vicor implement processes where they look at their entire supply chain operation and then take corrective action. So in Vicor's case, they use dashboards to look at all aspects of the production, the purchasing, the delivery to the customer. Those dashboards are updated daily, and then they implemented a process that looked for a 50% improvement in 4 key metrics. So they used analytics to identify where those opportunity areas were and to drive corrective action, and then they took the corrective action and monitored the ongoing performance. So they point to an almost doubling of their gross margin as a result of doing this combination of issue identification and then corrective action. Other companies, such as Freightliner, focus on specific business areas. So Freightliner had issues around supplier performance and supplier quality. So their first entry into metrics was to look at supplier performance, who were the good performing suppliers, both in terms of quality and delivery, and to focus on rewarding those good suppliers and mentoring the underperforming suppliers. So they, through focus on supplier performance, point to a 50% improvement in shortages and a 30% improvement in quality through that combination of not just metrics, but metrics with the appropriate action that visibility allows. So it's a combination of providing visibility and then using that visibility to give actionable insight. We have numerous organizations that work with sales and operations planning, complementing their ERP, such as what we see at Constar or at Dole. Constar managing production planning and supply planning across multiple plants. Dole doing extensive simulation and then using that simulation to go back and execute in the various ERP environments. So the goal of analytics is to really complement those transaction systems and to provide that actionable insight that allows users to then go and perform their day-to-day activities. So hopefully we've given you a perspective of why you might want to focus on analytics to complement your transaction systems and complement your ongoing operations investment. And what I'd like to do now is suggest that the combination of IBM and SIA is a strong partner for you to consider in your quest through analytics. We believe IBM analytics provides the best option in terms of a product and a technology approach, both in terms of the integrated portfolio. We spoke of analytics spanning multiple areas such as scorecards, dashboards, analytics, drill down, planning, and predictive. So from a product perspective, we have the broadest portfolio that gives you the greatest flexibility. we base the portfolio and base the solutions that we bring to market around key functional areas, and then those key functional areas are driven by that industry knowledge. The advanced technology is complemented by the ability that we have both in R&D, but also in our research arm. We have one of the largest research areas in the industry to allow experimentation, exploration, and development of new products and creative applications to customer problems. And then last but certainly not least is the strong ability that we have from an implementation perspective, both in terms of implementing and bringing together hardware and software, but also in bringing together a global partner network that balances local expertise, local technology knowledge, and the knowledge of the local markets that can well represent the IBM products and provide that local context that you need. And we're very proud to partner with SIA in this area to develop that locally. So with that as a background, I'd now like to turn it over to Andy to talk a little bit about SIA as a partner and the ability to deliver analytics. Andy?
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate it. And that was an excellent overview of analytics as it applies to the manufacturing sector. So yes, SIA is clearly offers a broad set of skills and services to complement IBM's world-class technologies, best practices, and know-how. We've been in business for over 36 years and really got our start as a developer of ERP solutions for the manufacturing sector. So we've expanded that across different components in the supply chain, but obviously have developed a keen understanding of core manufacturing issues and needs, and have always focused on investing in our customers' long-term success. So we have a lot of customers that we've been working with for many, many years. And aside from that, we have a broad set of skills and expertise across IBM's software portfolio, including the analytics products, their systems and services, deep technical expertise, and a methodology that really focuses around helping our customers drive business value and a rapid time to investment. So in terms of our manufacturing and business analytics expertise, we've done work for a number of different organizations. One example is a manufacturer of plumbing supplies here in Montreal, where we actually started by doing some multi-dimensional sales performance reporting and dashboards, and are actually working now on forecasting and demand planning. So we've moved from the first question of how are we doing, and we're starting to attack the second question of why and what should we be doing. We've worked with a couple of manufacturers that are actually based in the Eastern Townships. One is a manufacturer of kitchen cabinets, another one is makes automotive and household floor mats, where we've done some work around extract, transform, and load. So we're extracting data from various different systems, transforming it, and using tools to again provide scorecards and dashboards around performance reporting. We've actually taken the Cognos software and integrated it to our ERP application that we continue to market and support customers who are using it. So, specifically in areas like sales performance, pipeline, or sales management, if you will, and starting to work into the forecasting and demand planning areas. And we've also done some dashboarding and analytics work outside of the manufacturing industry. One example is an insurance organization in Toronto, where we've done some scorecards and dashboards for real-time monitoring of processes, claims processing in this particular case. So next steps, really, where do you go from here? Well, a couple of things. First of all, IBM has their annual Information on Demand conference actually coming up at the end of this month in Las Vegas. Certainly encourage you to take a look at the information on IBM's website, and we can send that to you, so that you can learn more about that conference and all of the things that are presented around analytics. And IBM will also bring the information from that conference back to local markets like Montreal in order to, to share with customers who aren't able to attend the conference. There's a couple of links at the bottom of the screen. So for more information around smarter analytics, for some demos of some of the products, you can also actually download and try. There's trial versions of products like Cognos Express. And one thing in the bottom left-hand corner I want to draw your attention to, which is the analytics quotient, which is basically a free assessment. I strongly encourage you to go visit and go through. It's a questionnaire that sort of is like a health check or a readiness check to let you know if you're ready and your state of readiness for using analytics and getting value from it. And of course, we encourage you to contact SIA or IBM, whether it's for more information or we can conduct executive solution assessments to help determine your readiness or where to start and so on. We can arrange to have experts like Paul come and visit you to share their knowledge and so on. What I've done, and by the way, being based in Montreal, of course, on dessert toute notre clientèle en français et en anglais. In terms of key contacts, I've given you some IBM contacts, who are responsible for the products, both from a sales and a technical sales standpoint. And there's myself and my colleague who are working with our customers to understand their needs and really help them understand how they can take advantage of these kind of technologies to drive business value. With that, I'm going to turn it back to Henry, and he'll open the, we've been receiving your questions as we've gone through the conference, and we'll let Henry moderate sending those questions out.
Sure, great. Thanks so much, Andy. So as Andy said, throughout the conference, we've been compiling the questions that we got in the online chat. So let's have a look at what we have. So the first question I have is, why should we look at IBM Analytics solutions when there are tools that are already integrated with our ERP software? So Paul, do you want to take that?
Sure, Henry. And that's actually a question that we get a lot. And it really comes from two perspectives. One is companies have made a big investment in the ERP system, the transaction systems, and also many of these systems come with their own reporting or their own analysis application areas. So we typically see people get value from a separate business analytics implementation in two areas. First, rarely does an end-to-end view of the organization come from just any one transaction system. So usually it's a combination of the ERP, supply chain applications, it might be external data relative to consumer demand, could be information that resides in spreadsheets. So typically we see companies that are balancing data from multiple sources, and those sources really need to be brought together into one environment, one analytics environment. And that's usually not the realm of the reporting in any one application. So the reports that come with an ERP system, for example, might do a good job of doing the reporting there, but they don't lend themselves to bringing in that additional data. So that's one reason that we see people implementing analytics on top of existing transaction systems. And then the other is the breadth of analytics. As I indicated earlier, analytics has really evolved far beyond business intelligence or just reporting. people will typically turn to an analytics suite like IBM's because they're looking for that combination of dashboards, scorecards, analysis, planning, and predictive analytics. Not that they want to implement them or need to implement them all at once, but it becomes important to have access to an analytics portfolio that they can implement over time. So some of our best customers are also large ERP or also large supply chain users that have decided to use IBM Analytics as opposed to analytics that might come with the transaction systems.
Very well. Thanks, Paul. So the second question that I have is, if we don't have a large budget, is analytics really affordable for a small business?
I can take that, Henry.
Sure.
Absolutely. I guess is the first answer. First of all, IBM has a very broad portfolio of products, so you don't have to buy the whole suite. You start you start small. In fact, our philosophy has always been think big, start simple, and scale fast. So, there's different products. Typically, we'll see people starting with, again, that first question of how am I doing, with business intelligence tools versus the decision management or the predictive analytics, and IBM will even offer their products in, a variety of versions, a standard versus an express version. In fact, customers can get started as easily as looking at Cognos Insight, which is a personal analytics solution for less than $1,000 per user. So definitely you can get started in a very affordable fashion, and really it's all about driving return on investment. So you may ask, how can I afford it? And I might ask, how can you afford not to do it?
Great, Andy. So the third question that I have from the chat is, we have custom in-house applications. Can we still take advantage of analytics?
Yeah, let me take a first pass at that. The answer is definitely yes, and that comes back to what I was saying earlier in some ways, Henry. One of the advantages of the IBM approach to analytics is we're data source independent, so we have the ability to receive many different data types from many different applications, and not to sound to flip, but it almost doesn't matter where the sources are. So we have the ability to take relational structured data, textual data, data from the web, data from homegrown applications, and bring that into an environment for analysis. So most definitely, we see having a packaged application is not a requirement for a good, strong analytics that, as Andy said, delivers good, strong ROI.
Yeah, I can add to that. We've done a number of proof of concepts with customers. Often when we're meeting customers, what we see is they're doing a lot of analysis using Excel spreadsheets. And more often than not, we can actually do a very simple and quick proof of concept by building a dashboard right on top of the Excel spreadsheet, and just the graphics and the drill downs and the multidimensional analysis adds a level of additional insight, and it's very quick to put together, and it's an easy start. So that's an easy way to get started. It's a simple data source, and then we can go from there and start to drill down and find out what are the right data sources to use to get the data in real time.
Great perspective. Some of our best customers are those that are using Excel today, and so obviously they're trying to do analysis, but they really run up against the limitations of it. And so that proof of concept is a great next step.
Okay, perfect. So we have time for one last question, and we deal with perishable goods and high inventory turnover. Where can we benefit most from analytics?
That whole, sorry if I may, Henry, that whole fast-moving consumer goods is probably one of the areas that we see most adopting of analytics from a couple different perspectives. We mentioned the challenges of demand planning. Well, if ever there's an area where I had to get demand right, it's in that the perishable environment. So it's understanding the customer trends, the customer demands, doing the planning, so that I'm producing the right product, so that I'm not putting myself at risk by having perishable goods that don't have immediate customer need. And then that high inventory turns, just as we saw in Becker, that need to understand demand, be able to fulfill it quickly, be able to understand issues with fulfillment, both in terms of planning and the delivery, is a real strong analytics application. So we see a lot of customers in that space really focus on supply execution. So am I producing right? Am I meeting service levels? Am I delivering to the customer? Right down to the point that we have several customers that will take real-time feedback back from the delivery fleet so that they really understand where the inventory is and is it being delivered. So I categorize this environment as one that has fast-moving, a lot of need for real-time information, and then to be able to act on that changing information. And those are real strong characteristics of where analytics can deliver ROI.
Great. Thanks so much, Paul. That concludes our webinar. A recording of this webinar will be made available. So I would like to thank both our speakers today and our participants for joining, and I wish you all a great day. Thank you so much, and you may now disconnect.